and does it appear as though, there we go.
There we go.
Wonderful. Well, welcome and good evening. We will call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum, and I do believe our first item before us is a motion to suspend the rules and meet virtually. Do I have a motion?
Motion to suspend rules and meet virtually.
Wonderful. Thank you, Derek, for motioning. And I need a second.
A second.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. So I have a second, and then we'll do a roll call.
All right, I'm just going to go with who I see at the top of my screen. Derek Ohanian.
Aye.
Great. Amanda Nugola.
Aye.
Great. Samantha Oldspry.
Aye.
Cherie Lackey.
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Perfect. And Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Well, we'll move to our second item, which is public comment. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to make a comment? If you do, just go ahead and raise your hand on Zoom, and we'll go ahead and make you a panelist and able to hear your comment. And then also, did we receive any written comment prior to the meeting? No written comment.
No written comment.
I'm not seeing any indication that there's any interest in public comment. There isn't any right now, but we'll go ahead and we can just revisit that right before we adjourn the meeting, just in case somebody changes their mind or is arriving just a few minutes late. Going right through the agenda, we're going to go next to our approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which happened on November 11th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move approval of the minutes.
Wonderful.
Second.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Reed. And Derek, were you seconding?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before we take a vote, is there any discussion or correction for the minutes? All right, then we'll go ahead and move. Can we go for a vote or call the roll?
Thank you. Derek.
Aye.
Okay. Amanda.
Aye.
Samantha.
Wrong button. Aye.
Cherie.
Aye.
Great. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
And Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Next item we have is the case management safety net reporting structure. And I believe I'm turning that over to
Jessica.
Jessica.
I do have a presentation if everyone will bear with me.
Jessica has been really, really busy getting agreements done and all that stuff. So we've got a whole bunch of them signed and are processing money to, to release funding. So wanted you to know that because
Thank you. Agencies have been working really hard. This is like a breakneck pace for us here. So it's a big group effort. I really had slides going over the definitions of case management and safety net and then the requirements. The reason that I'm doing this is because we want to make sure as a committee, we're all on the same page. So if there's anything that jumps out at people or if people would like to make changes, now is the time to make that known because these are the requirements that dovetail into our reporting. So case management services are primarily serve low to moderate income households. They provide a single connector to multiple comprehensive supports. And the goal is for households or individuals to reach self-sufficiency and wellness. The requirements include enrolling new Evanston residents, creating those service plans, whether they're called case files or case management plans, but the service plans that document regular meetings, referrals to support services, and the support services received. So they are specific and have measurable outcomes. And yep, the goal is to connect people to need and households to needed to support services. Safety net services address an immediate crisis. The goal is to protect individuals and households from falling into deeper crisis or falling into greater instability. Services may introduce households to deeper case management, but that is not a requirement. And we recognize that there is a great need for safety net services in our community given COVID. The requirements for safety net services are to help with a specific time-limited hardship, to provide rapid, low-cost, no-cost access to a service that's going to help, and that the service provides a measurable improvement to the well-being of participants, and that the service itself is measurable. Some additional components of safety net services are that they can be defined by that but-for rule. So like but for receiving food, this household or individual would not be able to eat, but for receiving tutoring services, as an example, children would do poorly in school or not be kindergarten ready. And again, case safety net services can serve as a gateway to deeper case management services, but do not always or do not need to. Any discussion? Okay, yep, Derek, hang on, I see you.
Sorry, I just had a question about the but-for rule. So what's the test that an agency has to pass to be designated as that? Or is it specifically based on the type of service they provide, like food delivery or medication delivery?
So that's a great question because we work with a lot of agencies that provide a lot of different services. And so we're really looking for that crisis. And so it is a little bit subjective.
Or actually, it's also very specific to the, I mean, Jessica's example, like the Meals on Wheels, for example, if, without that type of service, they would not have something. So I think it is very different for each one, but it's a kind of common sense rule of thumb way of looking at it, because we really wanted to define something that is just not something that is nice to have or may enhance somebody's life, but really addresses a very, very specific need. And does that answer the question? It's going to be a little different for any agency or any program, but that's how we tried to look at it when we were saying where organizations belonged as well, whether they were safety net or things like that.
Mm-hmm. That clarifies it. Thank you.
You know what? I'm sorry. Councilmember Burns is currently an attendee, and I am having trouble promoting him, and I don't know why. So
No, good. I signed on under a different device, so I'm on my phone and my laptop. So
thank you. I apologize.
I did have a question though. Is this for? Are we just double checking this for the organizations that we already awarded in a sense money, and not for the following year, right? Because I have a lot of,
So
I'd like a lot more time in terms of how we're going to score things or the criteria we're going to use moving forward. But this only applies to the group we already awarded funds, right? Or
Correct.
Okay.
So this is the foundation. We're asking, so we've asked agencies to move into agreements with us in the beginning of the month, and we're asking agencies to submit reports by the end of the month. And the reports that agencies are submitting will cover January 1st, 2021 through October.
Okay.
So we just want to make sure that we're
Through
agreeing on our
September.
definitions and our requirements.
A note, there are some other outcomes that they will report on, that they're their program outcomes, that in other words, how they evaluate, but these are just the specific ones that we tied to being able to evaluate whether or not they're functioning according to the definition of case management or safety net. It obviously in anybody's case plan evaluation process or something like that, they're going to have, there would be something like, I'm making this up, I'm not a case manager, but your goal would be to have clients meet at least 70% of the things in their case plan in a period of time or something like that. But so this isn't the only thing that the agencies or we'll look at those things as well if they're accomplishing those other goals that they put in.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I think it would be helpful at some point just to review this in a much deeper sense, like how many Evanston residents and how, there's so
Of
many other
course.
questions that I have for each one of these. I'm fine with using this for the current recipients or the latest recipients, but for the next round, whenever that happens, I think before then we should go back over this in greater detail.
There are some things that we aren't sharing that we always gather, though, that we will continue to gather, and it ends up in pages and pages, and it is the quantifiable, how many total people they serve, how many are Evanston residents, their race and ethnicity, and their income. So we have all of that they still have to collect, and they will be collecting that. That is, we've always maintained that we're going to use the CDBG categories for, just because we have to use them for that, and it's consistent, and that is consistent with other measures, but we will have those for you, and you will see those.
And so the next
Actually,
round
we
is
have them.
2023 would be 2023 recipients, just so I'm on the same page. We just awarded now.
We just awarded 2021, so we're almost retroactive right now. So
2022.
we're going to be doing 2022. We'll talk about that a little later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But if I could just say, the reporting structures that were included in the packet, there was one for case management and one for safety net services. Agencies would use those for 2021 and potentially 2022. So, and I'm prepared, if you wanted to go over the new questions we asked to try to capture the number of new Evanston residents, and for case management, the number of new service plans. We're working to capture the number of support services referrals. So we would be happy to take a look at this reporting structure in as much detail as the committee would like. And Derek, I apologize. Chair, I apologize for jumping in with that.
No, I think that would be very helpful. Councilman Burns, does that address, or do you have further questions? Because I know Derek does, and I think I do as well, but I just want to make sure.
No, let's move forward. I'm gonna check out some of my notes, and then I might be able. But yeah, I'm fine.
Perfect. Derek.
Similar to actually to Councilman Burns' question, focusing a little bit on the data, more so though, since the data is self-reported by the agencies, is there historically, have you done some sort of like an audit just to kind of check accuracy? Not that they would deceive, it's just from an audit accuracy standpoint.
Yes, so I have in the past done site visits where I look at a percentage of case files. I have not had the opportunity to meet with agencies probably in the past 2 or 3 years, but it is definitely my plan to go back and do that as soon as
And when we do that, and of course, the last 2 years have been we haven't been doing site monitoring. But what you do is you ask for a list of the files of the clients, and then you choose, just as you would in a financial audit. And so, there has to be stuff that you can see that they're actually serving, you know, those people. We actually, interestingly enough, we did have as an example, we had we pretty much follow the process that HUD uses for monitoring, which is that same thing. It's like if it's a social service agency and it's something like case management, you would do how many clients did you serve? Give us a list, and then you pull a random selection and that you then review. We had to do that electronically for our ESG monitoring, and it was an interesting thing because then we had to, because the stuff was being sent electronically, they didn't have a secure site. We had to block out all the names and things before we sent it. They were very specific about that. But that is the process for doing that kind of thing. And even if it's a safety net service, they have to have ways of documenting how they have served people and who they, you know, because they've got to have captured that information. They have to have forms of some sort that then indicate that. So.
Derek, did that answer all of your questions?
It does, yeah. I guess more curious, but we don't have to take the time to talk about this other part of this question now, is what happens if you do find errors in the data and, you know, kind of historically what's happened?
Those are findings and they have to correct how they're doing it and the information.
All right, just like an audit. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. This is one of the reasons you don't give out public money lightly. You know, there's a great deal of, you know, requirements that, because we really want to, we're really trying to be, especially with our new system of, you know, having, these are the things we're getting people to apply for, as opposed to we are funding their programs. And so it makes it easier for us to create a consistent measurement process when we're just funding programs that we know are doing good work. They don't necessarily capture the same information, and we haven't had quite this specificity. And I think this is going to help us better analyze, are we getting from the agencies what we are asking for?
Absolutely, Sarah. And to that point, one thing I noticed, Jessica, in the definition on case management, which I firmly agree with and believe in, is comprehension or comprehensive nature. Do we further define what we mean exactly by that comprehensive care or case coordination, case management?
Well, we do say basic needs and other things that they need to. It's a little bit soft in that it's really hard to, but we have to cover basic needs, you know. Even if they don't provide it, can they refer or take care of it? You know, is your client housed, or are you trying to get them housed? Are they, you know, fed? Are they, you know, and then whatever they determine in their case plan then can become the additions to that. That was one of the reasons we moved some of the, and the committee agreed that some of the organizations didn't belong in case management and they'd applied in it, and we moved them to the other one. And you know, there may be some other changes in the future. We may find that some fit better in other places, but you know, hopefully we'll get that. Our goal is really not to change who we're funding and what we're funding them for a extended period of time, because the progress that we're going to make is not going to be measurable for like how many people, you know, when you have complex needs, it's going to take a year or whatever or more. It's not, you're not going to be able to say, oh yes, we've got results in 3 months. Now, that'll be different for safety net, because in some of those cases, those may be. And so we expect there'll have to be some tweaks and stuff, but we're hoping that we're really trying to put together a much more measurable and outcome-based, and to really move people ahead and make sure that they are making progress. And in the past, our measurements have been inputs and short-term outcomes, you know, inputs, activities, and short-term outcomes. And we really haven't had any ability to say, yes, this family has moved from, or this individual has moved from instability and everything into a much more stable and life and the state of well-being. So
That's helpful. I do think to that end, it might be helpful to sort of flesh out with specificity, sort of those basic needs, like what, food, shelter, education, whatever it may be. I do think what one person may, or one agency or organization may deem as basic needs could differ from somebody else's. And so as long as, I think it would be helpful to have that common definition. So as we are looking long-term and sort of potentially looking at one agency's performance versus another, if one agency says there are 3 basic needs and, their care plans are meeting those, and one agency says there are 7, it's going to be a little hard, I think, to,
it's a good point.
it's an apples and oranges situation. The other
Mhm.
thing I didn't know, and maybe I'm missing it or we're getting there, the development of the care plan, do we require a periodicity timeline in which it's updated, reviewed, and then how do we mandate that it's member or client driven, and their goals, and how are we really documenting that? I find sometimes with case management, it's what the agency or the organization thinks that the client needs, and from a case management or care coordination perspective, it's not going to be very successful if it's not what the client or the member wants, needs, is their priority.
Mhm, mhm. I think part of that would be done in case visits because it's a review of the files. And, hopefully one can tell, are they meeting, and is there something that shows that they are engaged in that way? And Jessica can maybe give more information because, as I've said, I am not somebody who's done case management. Those of you who may have better explanations. I'm good at pushing paper around, but not necessarily at that.
Well, I can. I also saw Amanda's hand up. I think it's a balance between looking at industry best practice. Like I know some organizations are it's best practice to have clients sign off on case plans. And then there is a minimum standard, which is why we ask to see agencies' policies and procedures to review case plans. So we're looking at, are they reviewed quarterly, semi-annually, annually? We would ideally prefer that those case plans are reviewed quarterly or semi-annually. If they're reviewed annually, that might be sort of a long period of time and we might have challenges measuring. But we are open to input from the committee. I think Sarah and I have set up a framework, but the reason we love the expertise on this particular committee is because it is a conversation and we're looking for input as to how to tweak it.
I also want to point out that I had started out with I do it quarterly and stuff like that. And Jessica pointed out to me that sometimes early on, you're not going to make a lot of changes and you may even take a while working with somebody before you actually get a case plan written. And, I'm like, well, quarter 1, you ought to have this, right? And it's like, well, okay, so yes, so this is where but those are the types of things that Jessica's right. Those of you who are always doing this, I think that what we want to be able to do is bring results back to you and the type of information and get your professional expertise, enlist your help in seeing if you think we're getting the right information and if it's giving you what you need to evaluate the programs, not just what we think is going to work.
Perfect. Amanda, I know you raised your hand. I suspect we might have some similar thoughts. So why don't you go ahead and questions or comments, and then Derek, I see your hand up as well.
Oh, sure. I was just going to build on what Jessica was saying in that application, we do ask agencies to talk about their practice, around establishing care plans and such. And I also really like that we ask because not everyone had similar answers, but we do ask about the client feedback. So that's another way to get at whether the agencies are actually including clients in the plans or if they have feedback around that. So I think that's, maybe one check and balance that might exist around some of that.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. And what I was trying to get at is, as we start, sort of for the reporting measures, how I imagine we're going to be asking some questions on these. And is there sort of a benchmark or a goal? And if there is, I feel like we should be telling the agencies upfront, the committee would like to see that you're reviewing case plans at least semi-annually, so that if an agency reports that they're reviewing them annually and we've never given them any indication that that's not satisfactory, that could create some disconnect, and rather just be upfront. Derek, your hand was up and now it's down, but
two quick things. One, I definitely agree with the points that are being made about this right now, especially from like a transparency standpoint with agencies. The other thing I was going to say was, from an administrative operations question right now, I noticed Councilman Reed is no longer on the call. Are we still technically in quorum right now? Is it okay? Just want to make sure. 5 right now. Yeah. Is it 10 on the committee or? Okay.
9.
9. Okay. Perfect.
But good question.
so
But we're
please no
just
one else leave
discussing,
us,
so it's
is what
still
we are
okay.
saying.
Won't stay on. Hang on.
All right. Any other?
Could I just ask a question? If the committee were to say, hey, let's communicate that we would like at least a semi-annual review, at least as a start. One of the things we're going to have coming out of these first reports is, remember, because we didn't actually approve and fund everybody on our real schedule, we're not going to get perfect reports this time. It's a transition. But the more specifics that you all want us to start providing, because we need people to move toward it. Quite honestly, this first year is not going to allow us to evaluate things as thoroughly as we would want to, because, that's just what happened this year. But I do agree that it's very important for us to be as straightforward, and this is what we're looking for. And so, I think that maybe if people have suggestions or ideas and you want to send them to Jessica, we can start putting that together and then maybe bring it back and see if there are any other things that you think, because I agree with you that the sooner we make it absolutely clear, the better success we are going to have in having measurable stuff. It's absolutely true.
Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us again about 21, and my thought was truly from a 22 perspective, but it's just good to be reminded of that the reports we're going to see initially, they're completely retrospective, and so they will be perhaps unique. All right. Anything else on this topic before we?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just wanted to make sure we have, because I guess that's my fault for not for missing that on the agenda, but I just want to make sure we can revisit this at some point before we award the next round of recipients. And then at that point, and I think that should be something we do during the meeting as opposed to just sending it through email, because we may have different ideas as we listen to some of the other committee members. We may it may help us come up with other things, but I think we should basically put it on a future agenda to discuss as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perhaps put it on the January agenda, Councilman. Yeah.
Yep, that works. Thank you.
So can I ask, one of the reasons I included both the case management and the safety net reports was to get this feedback from the committee. Are there specific points of information other than the frequency of reviewing the service plans for case management services that committee members would like to see? I will say we are somewhat locked into these reports for 2021. And our goal was to, we're going to talk about this later on in the meeting. But the packet's out there, so this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Our goal is to potentially use this same reporting structure moving through 2022. So we're not locked in yet necessarily, but if there are things that are jumping out, I would be happy to, for example, go over the newer questions and what we've added and sort of the thought process behind those additions. And then if we're not capturing information that committee members would like to see, maybe I could take some notes around that and come back with something a little bit more comprehensive in January, or we could have a working group of committee members, a working group of 2, sort of review both the case management and safety net and come back and present to the group in January. We have a couple of options, but just so I'm clear on how the committee would like to proceed.
Yes, Councilman.
I think you hit part of it right on the head in terms of the thinking behind some of these questions. That's what I think I'm missing from what we have in the packet. And something a bit more comprehensive for sure would help me to better wrap my head around it. And then I could come up with some good feedback then.
How does the committee feel about the concept of a working group between now and the next meeting on the reporting for these 2?
Yeah, I'm happy to sit on a subcommittee.
I have quite a few thoughts as well. I want to, and I would also be happy to. I'm looking, I probably have, yeah. Unless there's somebody else who very much wants to be.
I'll just say I have no objection to a work group, and I also have no objection to the questions that are already established. So if I'm comfortable with people coming up with new ones or different or talking about the rationale, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how many people you need on it, but I'm comfortable having a work group. Okay, then.
We don't want more than 2 because we don't want to have to be an official public
Okay.
meeting and stuff. So
Perfect. Well, sounds like. Got it, so.
All right. And I do think the idea, Amanda, thank you for saying that, because I do think the idea is the basis. I think it's more addition or clarification, not necessarily subtraction, from at least from my point of view. All right. I have not. I imagine, do I have to ask for a motion to establish a working group, or?
no,
Nope,
I don't think
okay.
so.
Because it's just a working group with 2 people. It is not an official subcommittee or subgroup of this org.
And nothing is
of this-
being voted on or decided. It's just to
Nothing
bring
decided,
information,
just
to
some work.
bring information to the extra
Perfect.
work, but to bring information to the committee and to inform things. Yeah. This is one of the things that we tried to write into the sort of concept of the 2 new committees, because it's really something that we think is valuable and will improve how we are using our funding. So
Absolutely.
And just to confirm, when you and Councilmember Burns meet in the working group or however you connect, I'm here as staff to offer support, anything I can. So you're not obligated to reach out to me, but please feel free to do so. I'm available.
I would want to meet with, I think you know, if you agree, I would definitely love for you to be there. I think that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way you're getting out of meeting and assisting us in this process.
Yeah.
I'm free. This is what I'd love to do. So thank you.
Um, Oh, and we have a suggestion from the public. I think we can, when we go back to public comment at the end, I think we can discuss that a little bit further, but I do think that'll be helpful. I think that'll be helpful from Sue, the comment that she's made. Do we have anything else on reporting structure before we move to the next agenda item, which is 22 anticipated FY22 available funds? All right.
So it's the great guesswork for CDBG. I'm going to have, Jessica's going to put up some information for you.
Yep, I have a slide if people.
The joy is, just so that you know, in case you don't follow all the joyful things that Congress is doing, they did pass a continuing, and extended the continuing resolution through February 18th. So that means the likelihood of getting our CDBG grant agreements, grant amounts, would be probably in early to mid-April is what we're looking at. So this was a, you know, we may have a little more, we may be a little later than we'd hoped on finding out our actual allocations, but at least they didn't have a partial government shutdown. So I guess that's progress, huh?
So what we have here on the screen is a list of the grants that went into our 2021 funding and our estimated 2022. And the reason we're estimating our funds, as Sarah said, is because we don't have an actual CDBG grant amount. We won't get that until like the third quarter of 2022. But we have always made CDBG recommendations based on estimate. So that estimate is, I think, 1,800,000, and then our program income, which we do know to date. Our estimated CDBG is $285,375. We have a shortfall, a slight shortfall of just under 150,000 for 2022. And if we did receive more in public service dollars for CDBG, the committee could agree to either allocate that toward a category, whether it was case management, safety net, or support services, or the committee could sort of take note of applications that they thought maybe were underfunded for 2022, and then, you know, reconvene to allocate any overage. How did I do with that, Sarah?
Yeah, it is complicated, and it'll be, part of it will depend on when we actually make allocations for 2022, whether, and I want to, hopefully we can talk a little bit more about this in January, because maybe then we'll really have a sense of whether or not the Appropriations Acts are going to be passed by the end of the continuing resolution. And then HUD has up to 45 days before they actually release the grant amounts for each grantee. And so it'll help us maybe make a more educated decision. But one of the reasons we combined our funding, rather than always separating CDBG and the human services funding and just using them separately, is we're also trying to address the agencies, our service providers' needs to be able to receive funding. Historically, we have funded some agencies and programs with CDBG only, and they get their CDBG generally no sooner than September or October of the year. So they get all of their funding in, and it isn't even the last quarter of the fiscal year, because most of them are on a July 1 through June 30th fiscal year. So some of them really have gotten funds after they've closed their books for the first half of the calendar year, which is the second half of their fiscal year. And this is just one of the real things that we were trying to help agencies with, just for cash flow things too, because it's really rough to be, doing your program based on the expectation that you're going to get funded and not having the cash. And so this combining of funding allows us to use the city's human services funding in the earlier part of the year to keep that from having the effect, the impact on some agencies while others are getting their money more promptly. And I think that given the level of demands for everyone, it is a challenge to figure out, but we would potentially have other options like doing grants. What happens is we would say, this is how much funding you're guaranteed, because that would be through the city's local funds, and the expectation is that you will get this much more, approximately this much more, or something like that. We'll have to kind of work on how the agreements will be finalized, and how, or doing a first half of the year agreement type thing and then adding on. I think we'll have to discuss that based on what the timing of the federal government looks like. That's one of our big challenges. I wish we didn't have this problem to deal with, frankly.
So that takes us through our memo around our anticipated funding. And then this is the final slide that speaks to that final memo about the 2022 application cycle. Again, we're sort of behind, not sort of, we are actually behind for our 2022 application cycle. And the committee doesn't need to make any decisions. We certainly recognize that, we want to review reports and see how agencies are doing. Ideally, that will happen at the February meeting. But staff is encouraging the committee to consider an allocation discussion, or a discussion of allocating 2022 funds potentially at the March meeting, because that would allow staff to move into agreements with agencies around April. And so, as Sarah said, that would give us the chance, that would provide stability to the agencies to let them know what they can anticipate for 2022 prior to the close of their fiscal year, and then moving into the beginning of their next fiscal year. So I just wanted to see if there were any questions about either our anticipated funds or our proposed timeline.
Any discussion on that? Being prepared to make allocations by March of 22 for 22, which would really mean that we're having some pretty robust discussions in our January and February meetings in order to be in that position.
Correct.
Does anybody have a concern about that timeline or general support? I think from an agency perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a lot of work, and I definitely veers from how traditionally things have been done, but obviously we're just so behind in terms of scheduling. I don't know how you get back on track for the grant cycle without accelerating this 22 grant cycle, or accelerating to catch up based off the fact that we would normally be right now be talking about 22 if we were being a normal
Right.
cycle.
And I think what's really important, as we said, we aren't necessarily going to get all of the data and information out of 2021. So honestly, to open up and do a full application cycle. Now, if some agency or program were not delivering at all, obviously we would not recommend that we fund them, but I think we have to be understanding of our agencies that they haven't really even, in some cases, I mean, we did fund some agencies that are pretty much starting now. And so how would we, so it's going to be a really kind of another weird year, but I think we're going to learn a lot, and we'll, but you know, I would like us to consider going forward, looking at a maybe 2-year grant cycle with, of course, measures along the way, because as I say, we're not just funding what agencies do, we're asking them to do specific things that we want done. And I think that by showing a willingness to commit to that, unless, I mean, obviously we could come to the conclusion, I certainly hope we don't, but could, that this whole thing wasn't working, and then we would obviously change everything. But I think that one of the things that is lacking in accomplishing real change in people's lives is that there is no ongoing support that the agencies can count on and that the people can count on. And that's really what this is trying to address. So I hope it'll be, I know it's going to be a little bit rocky, but I really do think that we're onto something that can really help people, and by focusing much more broadly on their holistic needs and addressing them. You know, this country, our social services system is set up piecemeal, and one of the things that happens is that makes it hard for people to gain access to what they really need. And so I'll get off my soapbox on that. I think everybody, I mean, I honestly think that this is something we've all agreed on, but you know, it really is not, it is a big change based on the way everything works in this country.
Discussion from committee members, comments?
I'm in support of this plan. I mean, I think, yeah, it'll be some work, but it's nice to have a timeline. I feel committed to doing this. I think I'm in support of it.
Thank you.
I want to echo Amanda's comments and thoughts as well.
Okay, I don't think we have a whole lot more to say about the timeline, Jessica. That's kind of like it. It's, you know, a little bit in flux still, but you know, if we could only get Congress to actually do stuff on time.
No, I agree. That was it for my timeline. And actually that was the last slide. Well, my last slide, you know, just said, thank you. And truly, thank you all. Yep. Sorry, I realized I was going to overstep the chair. So I don't want to do that, but thank you for the discussion.
Oh, perfect. And Jessica, to that end, and you could not possibly overstep me. I have the tiniest of toes. However, we sort of already started to discuss we moved from available funds, and we also discussed the application cycle there. I mean, in one bullet point. And then the next item, staff report, just your remaining thank you slide. Is that correct?
Well,
Or
no,
do you have
actually,
more? You have
for
more.
staff report, we do have a few items. The 2022 Community Development our action plan is still in its public comment period, along with our amended citizen participation plan. That will be, the public comment period closes December 14th, if I'm correct, Sarah. Mm-hmm. So there are links. It is available in hard copy at the Crown Center and at Levy for anyone who would like to review that document in hard copy, and it is available online. And then our final item in staff report is that one agency, Metropolitan Family Services, has bowed out gracefully from the application process. So the funds that they were awarded have gone into our pot for support services. So it leaves us with just over $200,000 for support services. Metropolitan Family Services is a wonderful organization, and they are making big changes in Evanston. Jennifer Jenks was not able to be here tonight to talk about those changes, but she would like to come to the January meeting. As a little preview, and I'm not speaking from a place of authority here, but Metropolitan has partnered with the Howard Area Community Center. So the organization will have a real presence along Howard in Evanston. So we see it as a tremendous win for Evanston.
Opportunity.
A tremendous opportunity. Thank you, Sarah. Yep, and they would like to come back to the committee and potentially be considered for funding again, perhaps in a different capacity. They were able to hire their family coach. That position is not focused solely on Evanston residents, but they are reassessing given this big change, and would like to, again, let the committee know more information and perhaps be considered in future. And that is it, unless I'm missing anything, Sarah. That's it for staff report.
No, I don't think so. I just want to recognize that we respect Metropolitan Family Services saying we're not going to take the funding, even though we've hired for this position, because we are not going to dedicate it only to Evanston people. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to be serving Evanston people either. But I just, I think that that's a really respectful thing that they have done. And they're saying that we have to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row to deliver on what we're promising. And so I agree with Jessica that we may want to see how that works out, and to be able to include them in what might be the 2022 funding cycle, if they seem, that to be able to come back at that point, or if they come back, have something that could come back even sooner, maybe.
Perfect. And I could not agree more. All right. That is it with our staff report. However, I want to go back to that public comment. We have a public comment from Sue on reporting, and then I just want to make sure that other attendees either send in a chat or raise your hand if you do want a public comment. And so I can read Sue's chat to everybody. However, Sue, if you want to come on and vocalize it, just let us know. Raise your hand. Yes. So based on very recent conversations at Connections about people and issues slipping through their cracks, should the reports from the agencies ask about gaps they are seeing and what kinds of expenses they can help people with? I think that is a great call out, especially as we think of safety net services in future funding, sort of a feedback loop from what I'm assuming Sue is saying is a feedback loop from our case management agencies on where are the most challenging connections. Is it on, is it food? Is it housing? Is it mental health? What is it? And so that way, as we think of especially safety net services, we can make informed decisions going forward. I think, Sue, that is what you're saying. I think that is very logical and something we can discuss. And yes, Councilman Burns.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know we can't have another committee member on the working group, but Chair, if you would be open to this, I think it would be great to have Sue, if she's willing to join us on the working group, or anybody else, because we have a lot of folks who are tuning in tonight who work in case management and for nonprofits. And I think the more the merrier. I'd love to have additional committee members on that working group, but if we could pull a few community members who are interested, I think that would be great too.
Well, the good thing about the working group is you can have as many non-committee members as you want.
Right. And so,
Exactly.
technically.
Yes, Jessica.
Are there any thoughts about having agency representatives on a working group that would,
Be measuring them.
yes, yes.
Mm,
Yeah, I see that point. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I don't know if there's, again, because we're gonna provide our own input. I think it's just the one recommendation that Sue just had. I mean, that was a good idea. I just think the more heads we can get on this, the better. But we can work through that offline. I just thought it'd be great to have a bit more people.
It could certainly, I could see getting input because, you know, things like, okay, we've always sort of assumed a certain thing, and there are going to be some gaps, especially as the world is constantly changing. You know, new things are coming out all the time. And, you know, so I think that it might be beneficial. And I just think that we have to think about that, but I don't think that's going to be an issue if it's a way of seeking input that is very direct, because one of the things is it's easy to design things from a standpoint of what we want, but not necessarily what makes it, you know, is from a reporting standpoint. And that's one of the things that Jessica and I've done in the past historically, like, is this stuff, you know, how can you, if we create a report process that is going to give us exactly what we think we need, but the agencies can't really do that, then we haven't accomplished anything too. So I think that that's one of the things. It's like,
exactly. Can the data be operational? Can they operationalize the report? Are
Right.
we asking the questions and getting at what we really want?
Right.
Sometimes I find on my side of things, reporting, sometimes we're asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
And you know what? I would love to then offer this to all agencies. We have in the past had sort of town hall style meetings with agencies in February and you know, at various points last year. We would love to get their feedback, but I agree, work somehow with you, Chair Olds-Frey, and you, Councilmember Burns, if you're forming the working group, to see how to invite all of those voices. Because I agree, it's critical. It was something that was on our plate for January to talk to the agencies. So this just accelerates.
Jessica, that's an interesting point. And we do have one of our agencies saying, can an email be sent out to providers to give them a chance to volunteer?
Yeah.
But we did, when we were trying to really work out the structure for this, we had two sessions, I remember, where we even had, you know, the board where people can put their comments and you can sort them into, you know, we even use, you know, we used a number of tools to try to get input, and maybe something like that we could certainly, if Chair Frey and Councilmember Burns, if you wanted something like that set up, we could do that, because, you know, then we really are engaging everyone who is in our group, and it becomes less of, hey, is somebody managing to, you know.
You don't want to leave
But-
anybody out, certainly.
Right,
And,
exactly.
That makes sense. And I just personally work well. Sometimes, I mean, we all do, I think, is you hear somebody say something, you're like, oh, that, you know, come to think of it, I have another idea that builds on that. So I think, yeah, however we can get, whatever the right way is to get more folks in from the committee, I think is a good step.
Collaborative approach.
Absolutely.
And I'm the same way. So I appreciate that is your approach also, Councilmember Burns. And Derek, I've not forgotten you. You have comments or questions?
I do, just more of a, I guess, a question. So for the rest of the committee who can't be part of the working group because of quorum laws, is there can we direct types of questions or data that we'd like to see to somebody just to aggregate?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll jump into that. Just as, I wouldn't say can't, because there's nothing stopping us, I mean, other than staff having to post notice of the meeting and allow for public comment. The committee could have 3 if you're interested in joining, just to.
If I could say, we could also, town halls all are welcome. So depending on how we advertise them, Sarah, let me know if I'm wrong. But if it is set up as a town hall discussion where all could join through Zoom, would there be challenges with?
I don't think so. One of my concerns about doing something that open is you could get people who aren't either on the committee or the agencies that are involved who might want to put in their 2 cents, which might not necessarily be helpful. I mean, I do believe, Councilmember Reed, that if we have a meeting at which we have 3 of the committee members, that we then have to post and make it public, and that I don't know that, you know, like if we were to set up what we were just talking about, a Zoom meeting with the agencies without broadening it to the public, I don't think that would be allowed. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, yeah, the meeting would have to at that point be open to the public, but
Yes,
you know, they don't have to participate. They just have to be able to witness,
true,
other than public comment.
true.
But Derek, to your question, I'm happy to receive any comments, depending on how we set them up. If we do set it up with just 2 members and not public comment, happy to aggregate.
And I would hope too, all this will come back to a meeting and, you know, for us to discuss anyway. So I don't want to lose sight of that. Yeah, this should all make its way back to an agenda where we all can discuss it together.
Yes.
Absolutely.
My understanding is it would be on the January agenda. And so really the idea is just to have some thorough discussion, especially I like the idea added with the agencies where they can provide feedback on what they can report and what they can't report, and a dialogue that's a little bit different than a public meeting, and bring that back, aggregate it, and discuss it with the full committee in January.
Can I ask just a clarifying question about our timeline here? Sorry, I will be in contact with you, Chair Oldsfry, and you, Councilmember Burns, to kind of talk about how we're going to structure this. And I'm assuming that's going to take place next week before the holidays. And then we're looking at meetings with agencies probably the first week in January. Correct, after the holidays? I don't have my calendar here in front of me. I'm just asking because people get busy with the holidays, and I want to know that we'll have enough time to present that information to the committee before our meeting, our standard January meeting, which is the 2nd Thursday of the month.
Which comes very quick because so it would be the 13th.
13th. On the other hand, there's also an option of moving it later if that would be, because again, it's not like there is action that the committee must take, I don't think. You know, it's not like, you know, so that could be a consideration as well, maybe moving it to the 20th of January if that were to give more time. I mean, is that a possibility that might be beneficial?
I will say from my point of view, we could probably have a more robust discussion if it's moved a week. But I know people's calendars are complicated.
Yeah,
I've seen it. Perfect.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm in agreement with moving it the week so that you all can have time to actually meet with all the organizations.
I have a student assignment committee commitment with District 5 on that Thursday. I can miss that for this meeting. I just will want to make sure it goes back on whatever. I just got to look at what cycle, whatever cycle we're on now is working. It's not interfering with that committee, so I can make it work for the next meeting. And then
Yeah, I don't think we
I
want
don't know
to
if it's-
change the cycle overall.
Yeah, okay.
But
Yeah.
we do have the flexibility to change a meeting schedule for things like this. And this is the time of year, January and December are the ones that we are most likely to. I mean, we moved the Housing and Community Development Committee meeting from the third Tuesday to the second one in December, next week, because nobody wanted to be coming in what amounts to be the week before Christmas, so that's a pretty standard problem that we run into in January and December, just based on the way the calendars fall. But if the committee would like to make this change and we want to decide it at this meeting, I think that would be beneficial to go ahead with. We're missing just one. We're missing.
Archana. Archana is not able to attend.
Yeah.
But we could take a little, I'm sorry, we could take a vote or a handout. Demita wrote in the comment, thank you so much, that she's flexible in January. Councilmember Burns, thank you for your flexibility. Does anyone else have any conflicts that they know of for Thursday, January 20th? Other than the multiple calendar invites you'll be getting from me, that might be confusing. Sorry, I'll work on that. Okay.
I'm
How
not seeing
about the
any.
time? I was just saying, did this time work for everybody tonight, 6:30?
Yes.
Should we just keep it? Or,
Now we're moving into motions and votes, please.
Anybody have any issues with the 6:30 or did it work? I mean, it felt it was a little tighter for me, but I'm here.
I do just want to raise the potential that we will go back to having in-person meetings at some point in the year, and that was why we've traditionally had that. So I would think maybe we shouldn't make that change formally at this point. We can do it for individual meetings, though. That's no problem. And it is in our ordinance. So technically we would have to change that ordinance. And I don't think we want to do that right now. But I'm happy to say if people find 6:30 convenient, I don't expect we're going to be having an in-person meeting in January. So that would be perfectly fine to move to 6:30 then, if that's the choice of the committee. I think that would be absolutely fine.
I apologize. I was confused. I thought the move to 6:30 was just for the January meeting, but not.
Well, it was, but what I'm saying is it was for the December meeting, but we could now make it for the January one as well, because we're already changing the date. I just don't want to change all of the meetings because the standing committee meetings are set based on things that aren't what's in action, what's not happening right now. And that is people go back to in-office stuff much more than we sometimes have people who simply can't physically get there.
Yeah, I'm flexible with both. 7 p.m. will work better for the 20th for me, just because I have a 6 to 7:30 commitment, so I could do that for an hour and then hop on here. But I'm flexible.
Does anybody have an issue with 7 on the 20th? Because if it works better for Councilman Burns, I'm seeing nods in the affirmative. No one has an issue. All right, and then we will need a motion to move the January meeting date. So I need a motion to move the January meeting date from the 13th to the 20th at 7 p.m. So I have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
second.
Thank you. Derek, second. And with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Apologies. Oh, I'm sorry.
Demita, I'm so sorry. You raised your hand?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was supposed to be my Aye.
We're going to start with you. So Danita Cravens, aye. Derek Ohanian,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
Samantha,
Aye.
Sheree.
Aye.
Perfect. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
And Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you.
I see no more public comments. Sarah Jessica, I assume you do not either?
Nope.
All right, seeing no further business before the committee, we can adjourn. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next year.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Aye.
Happy holidays.
Aye. Happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.